Hello and welcome to Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner, proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a small online media firm, trying to bring you some really good sports analysis and opinions. And on cue, here comes my cat who has been sleeping all day till right now when I finally start doing something. Every time. Um, so anyway, sorry, got distracted by my cat again. I mean, seriously, it is like clockwork. He just knows when I'm going to start the stream. He will sleep all day. I'll be sitting in the living room chilling, nothing going on. I start the stream, cat. Every time. So, with that being said, today I'm getting into some Final Four. I'm going to get into the Final Four, watched both games. Two very different games, and both incredible. One was incredible. Just the first half was such a brutal beatdown in Baylor and Houston, um, and then UCLA Gonzaga was maybe the greatest college basketball game, maybe basketball game I have ever watched. Just incredible. It's up there with Memphis, Kansas, Villanova, UNC. UCLA was on fire and could not win the game. I thought it was incredible. So I'm going to get into that here in a bit. We've got some more Deshaun Watson news. I'm not going to spend long on that. Last week I gave some longer, more detailed thoughts on that situation. But I am going to talk about it a little bit later. And the back half of the show, I'm going to do my AFC East Division draft primer, going through all four teams, my opinion on what their needs are, and guys that they can target for those needs throughout the draft, or where I think would be appropriate for them in the draft. So that's going to be the second half of the show. And it's like that, and that might take up more than just half the show. I might run through my other topics and and just roll right into that, or take a short break and then roll right into that. I am working on getting some music created, so we'll have some kind of filler for the beginning of the show while I wait for people to, potentially trickle in. Some musical transition type stuff for like breaks and stuff like that, working on graphics. So I'm excited for that. But that's taking some time, updating some graphics or getting some graphics created, stuff like that, taking time. So, but Blind Eye 2.0 show. Oh wait, sorry, AEW's already got that locked down. Blind Eye 2.0 version of the show is coming. I thought it was coming Friday, and I guess I have a small little upgrade. Which I had to take my stream down Friday for reasons. But I will not make that mistake twice. So what I can do is boom. Wait, it didn't do it. Boom. And check that out. I can flip between scenes. Now I'm tiny up in the corner. Actually, you know what? Just on the fly here, I'm going to shift something. Boop. Actually, maybe I'm trying to find the spot where I can snag and enlarge it, because I'm going to move. You know what? Ooh. I don't know why that happened. Nope. Well, things not working how I want. Boom. Now, snag. See, I can like move stuff around now. I'm learning. And then we can move stuff around as we see fit. I can enlarge things as I see fit. So boom. So anyway, I have Todd McShay's tier rankings list for the draft up. Just as something like I can kind of pull up and talk about if I wanted to. He puts prospects into tiers. This is a really deep draft. He usually does not have. He has 29 prospects with flat first round, should not go any later grades. And his guys that have like, as he would call, solid second round value type grades, which usually a number of these guys go in the first round. He's got 19 of those. I have several of these guys personally with first round grades. I think Darisaw is a top 15, top 20 prospect. Terrace Marshall's a first rounder for me. Christian Barmore is a borderline. Javonte Williams, in terms of talent, is an elite running back prospect. I just don't like running backs necessarily in the first round. Levi Oruzarike, definite first rounder for me. Or not definite, but I mean he's like late first, early second. Liam Eichenberg is absolutely a first round tackle in my opinion. I think Elijah Moore is a borderline first rounder. There's just so many receivers. Joe Trine, I mentioned on my pass rushers, on my pass rusher column, that I had, or not column, but segment, that I had Tryon, or I misspoke about Tryon. I've gone back and, well, I heard someone else talking about him, and so I went and I did some more tape. He has absolutely got pop to him. He's a strong pass rusher. I said he was more speed, but I had that wrong. I had that dead wrong. Joe Tryon is a really good physical, like really physical player. And I could even see a team really falling in love with him and taking him in the late first. Although I think he is solidly a second round guy, and I would put him ahead of. I had Ronnie Perkins ranked ahead of him, and I'm wrong there. I think like Perkins is great, and this reflects more on Tryon than Perkins. I'm just moving Tryon up my board. So Rashad Bateman they've got in the second round. Like Bateman should be a first round receiver. I'll tell you who is overrated here, and that's Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell at his pro day, 4.44 or 4.42 40. He's like maybe 5'9", and he weighed in 155 pounds. Like people were talking about Devontae Smith being skinny at like playing between 175 180. You know, Marquise Brown was like 5'9.5", 178, I think. 175 when he came out of Oklahoma a couple seasons ago. Like 155, I don't feel comfortable with anyone other than a return specialist at that size. I think Tutu Atwell is a day 3 prospect. Personally, I think he's a 4th round guy. Jalen Mayfield's another guy I think, to me, has first rounder written all over him. As I do about Asante Samuel Jr., which makes me want to. And when I did my cornerbacks, I did not put Kelvin Joseph in my top 10 because honestly, one, I forgot about him. But I think he's a second round guy. So if I come back around to my top 10 cornerbacks, he will be absolutely included in that. I'm kind of looking through here again at his tier 3 guys. And yeah, I like all these guys. as first runners, except Aziz Ojulari. I get he's a really good speed rusher, but I think he's a day 2 value, or he's a second round value. Like he's like around prospect 40 for me. I think I think there's probably at least 7, 8 guys here I would rank ahead of him. And right now I might put Tryon above him. He's definitely in the same range. But yeah. So anyway, we're going to flip off of that real quick. Boop. And hey, I'm back to big screen. So, getting into topic 1, I want to talk about the Final Four today. I know I'm kind of flipping really big from like that kind of draft stuff, but I was just kind of showing some of the stuff I'm learning how to work with. So we're going to start with Baylor Houston because I have less thoughts on that than Gonzaga UCLA. That game was insane in the first half. Like the beatdown Baylor put on in the first half. 45-20 at halftime. Baylor kind of slowed down the second half. Like their shooting cooled off in the second half. And their defense slipped a little in the second half. Houston was bellwethered by I believe it was Sasser. He went 5 of 7 I think from 3 in the first half, or 5 of 8. I know he was 5 of 7 at one point, and I think he also, I don't know if he had any free throws yet, but he was accountable for like at one point 15 of their first like 17 points. I think he hit 2 free throws or got a layup or something towards the end of the half. But I think he scored like 17 of their 20 points in the first half. In the second half, they had their other big scorer or big shooter finally hit a couple shots and scored. Their offense came a little bit alive, but Baylor still ended up winning. I think it was by like 19, 20 points. I think they coasted a little in the second half, and that was still good enough to where, like, getting outscored by 6 in the second half, they ended up still winning by 19. It was brutal. Baylor, Mitchell for Baylor, I think he ended up with like 12 points and 11 assists, 12 points, 12 assists. Dude was incredible dishing the ball. And at the end of the first half, he hit back-to-back, like, step-back threes. Like, on back-to-back possessions to get them to 42 and 45 points. He was really impressive. Butler for Baylor, I think he scored all of his points in the first half, but he had like 17 points, I think, in the first half. Just wild production. But then he really didn't do anything in the second half. They're tall, like, shaggy white dude. What's his name? Something Meyer. Had a couple really, really cool plays. He had this one play on the perimeter. The Houston defender's like, oh, I don't have to worry about too much. And then you see Meyer do this, like, between the legs dribble, and you see this guy's kind of head go, wait, what? You just kind of see on his face, like, oh, wait, what? And then he pulls out a couple dribble moves and then moves to his right and then drives straight down the middle, blows by this dude. I say blows by him, like gets by him for the layup. And it's like you just see this dude's face by the end of it. He's like, what was that? I think he underestimated the dude because he's like, oh, this is some like long white dude. Like, he's not breaking out guard like hand. What is this? Oh, it was super entertaining. Meyer was really good. I mean, Baylor in the first half was just dialed in. Like, Baylor's first half was so impressive. And the fact that they kind of coasted in the second half and still scored, like, I think it was 33 points in the second half, something like that. 31, 33 points. Just they were outstanding as a team the whole game. Their defense, particularly in the first half, like when they're dialed in, what is so impressive about Baylor was their rotations were so in sync. They were getting their closeouts were crisp. They weren't consistently, like, they were consistently keeping the corners guarded. They just did an extremely good job. Obviously, they weren't necessarily perfect defensively, and that Sasser for Houston was hitting some tough shots. The other guy, I couldn't think of his name earlier, was Grimes. Baylor just really good, and I'll give, and we should give credit to Houston. They battled all game long. The thing is, and I think Charles Barkley said it best at halftime. One of the biggest reasons Houston is such a good offensive rebounding team is because they miss so many shots. And I will commend them. One of the things they were doing really well is on drives, their big guys would kind of start to space a little, and then they would crash one on either side behind the guy, streaking in, attempting the layup. Most of the time, those guys were going way too fast, and the ball would bounce back. But because at least one of the Baylor bigs would also contest that Houston layup on the drive, it would leave one of the bigs, if not both of them, in prime rebounding and putback position. And they regularly, though, would miss the putback and then grab it again and then get that one to go. But part of the reason Houston's offensive rebounding numbers were so impressive is because they miss a lot of shots. And they did have a relatively easy path to the Final Four compared to the other three participants. I think they were they would have been outmatched. They would have been outmatched by UCLA the way UCLA has played. You want to talk about a team that was not playing like their seed. It's UCLA. And either it's a testament to like how tough the Pac-12 was this year, or a testament to UCLA just having some problems during the season and figuring out how to play together and play great basketball at the right time. Something or other. Like, I don't know how UCLA was seeded that low as good as they've been during the tournament. Seems like some kind of wild oversight. But congrats on a really impressive season for Houston. Another subplot to the Baylor-Houston game. Houston, one of their assistant coaches, his son is an assistant coach on Baylor's staff, which was an interesting subplot to that game. Just that, father versus son. And that same Houston assistant coach is about to become the head coach at Lamar University, local to where I live in Beaumont, Texas. So, good for the Lamar Cardinals getting themselves a coach with a Final Four trip, recently in his resume. Even if he was an assistant, not the head coach, still. And congratulations to that guy on getting a head coaching job. Like, that's pretty cool. So, with that, that's basically all I've got on Baylor-Houston. Now we're going to move into one of the greatest college basketball games of my lifetime. Gonzaga UCLA was a barn burner. It was incredible. UCLA was on fire, it felt like the whole game. What was that guy's name? Not Janizag. Janizag? Janzig? Something like that for UCLA. Dude was on fire. He was hitting everything. And the team as a whole, if they took a shot, particularly if they took a jump shot, it went in yesterday. I don't know, or Saturday. I do not have the numbers pulled up in front of me on the shooting percentages. But oh my goodness, it was ridiculous. Like UCLA's percentage of jumpers, particularly in the second half. They would pull up, like, particularly these shots, like, around the free throw line. Like, the elbows and, like, directly, like, around, like, that middle, like, 13 to, like, 16-foot range jumpers. Or maybe, like, 13 to 18 feet. Just automatic clockwork. They were just nailing these shots. It was ridiculous. Like, and usually, like, they've got a guy right there. These weren't easy. These were, mostly well contested shots, and they're just dropping them. If they took a jump shot, it was going in. It was really crazy. The only thing that saved Gonzaga was some timely turnovers, a couple of offensive fouls on UCLA, literally a couple missed jumpers, like maybe a couple missed, like, contested layups or whatever, that when they were able to get the rebound. And a couple block shots. But particularly two plays at the end of regulation, like late in regulation, that saved that game for them. And this game was just nuts. Although, something very interesting, he had like a couple of big plays, but for the most part, I want to say there was a player that I was actually severely disappointed by in this game. Cody Kispert might have been the worst player on the floor for either team that got big minutes or in that game. And I've been really high on Kispert, but this guy, and he hit, like, I think one clutch three, but I think he missed every other jump shot he took, and he took a couple bad ones. He coughed up a possession at a really bad time, just threw the ball up in the air like a freaking idiot, and he ball watched way too much defensively. Just could not keep himself near the guys in the corner. UCLA was on fire shooting, and he just creep in towards the ball slowly from the corner. They'd whip a corner pass, and his guy would be just wide open from the corner. Kispert nearly cost Gonzaga that game. And that might be a hot take to some, but Cody Kispert was bad. And if that's the kind of player he's going to be, then he's not as good a prospect as I thought. I know it's one game, but I bet now if I go back and watch, I'm going to see a lot more of that. I'm going to see a lot more of that kind of stuff, which that's not what you want in a role player. Role player needs to Kispert, should have a role at the next level as a shooter, who can play solid to above average team defense. He was not that in the UCLA game. But everyone else in this game was just phenomenal. Ayayi from Gonzaga, who I think was like their 4th or 5th leading scorer coming into the game on the season. He was on fire. He started off like 8 for 8, I think, with 18 or 20 points. It was ridiculous. I don't think he missed a shot until the second half. He was just wild, and his speed getting to the basket was incredible. Jalen, well, I'll get into Jalen Suggs last. They have a Florida transfer. I'm trying to remember. He has a weird name. It was like Nimbush or something like that. Nimbird, something. He played. When he would come into the game, they'd have these 2-point guard looks, and he made some awesome entry passes, some really good plays, hit a few shots. Like, he was a perfect 6-man for the NCAA tournament, because guard play determines so much of the tournament. Do you have a guard who can set your big guy up to where he's not having to do all the work if you have a great big man, which Gonzaga does in Time? And this guy came off the bench and was just a really good distributor, solid defense. Their defense, UCLA, it wasn't like they were getting like all these open looks either. Most of these shots they were hitting were tough shots, except for those corner threes that Kispert kept letting or leaving open. This team Gonzaga did a great job of switching and recovering in a lot of cases, or fighting over the tops of screens. Like, they were beating UCLA's screen game for the most part. UCLA was just hitting a bunch of tough shots, and UCLA deserves a ton of credit. Their coach, Mike Cronin, I think it's Mike, not Steve Cronin. I know it's Cronin. He deserves a ton of credit. He did an amazing job, like, coaching this team up. And UCLA's defense was stifling, which is a testament to both teams that this game, ended up 93-90 in overtime. And that it was such a high-scoring game in general, because the defenses were playing really, really well. I will say the refs had some interesting, like, calls and non-calls during this game. There was a lot of pushing off being allowed by ball handlers, particularly UCLA's ball handlers were just shoving defensive players back, and that was rather frustrating to see. Gonzaga got away with a couple, but UCLA's point guard literally got away with back-to-back push-offs at the beginning of a possession. He crossed half court and just shoved this guy back twice, just blatant. And then they didn't call it. And it was really interesting to me. Although I will credit the refs for getting a really good, or tagging, I think it was UCLA's Riley with a flagrant 1 where he absolutely hooked the Gonzaga player, and when he went to jump, basically hip tosses him onto himself, at like pulling him down, but looked like he was going for like some kind of judo throw or hip toss. It was clearly a flagrant, and I credit the refs for getting that one. For the most part, I would say it was a pretty well officiated games, although most collegiate basketball games I don't think are very well officiated, personally. It seems like all sports at this point, the referees seem to be getting worse. Maybe it's because we're able to see more, but I mean, to me, it's pretty blatant, obvious stuff that they're screwing up. So, But that second half of Gonzaga UCLA was ridiculous. I mean, because it was a 1-point game at halftime. Gonzaga 45, UCLA 44. And in the second half, like UCLA just wasn't missing. It took superhuman performances from Suggs, or superhuman like efforts from Suggs, and Tim A just going scorched earth for a couple stretches for them to win that game. Well, and a Yaye, although most of that was done the first half. Jalen Suggs, though, was the hero of this game. He had probably the block of the year on Riley on an open dunk attempt that would have been huge for UCLA at the time. Suggs, not only though does he get the block, he then corrals the ball in the corner, takes a couple steps up court or so, and fires like a 3/4 length of the court, or like 3-point line on one side to free throw line on the other, kind of from the outside to the left side of the court, bounce pass to his teammate who gets the layup, a big layup. And honestly, it might have been Kispert who got the layup, but I'm not sure. It was him or the guard I was talking about earlier, Nim whatever, who's a transfer from Florida this year. This was it was an incredible play by Suggs, because it was, like I said, block of the year material, because he chases down, comes flying in from out of nowhere to erase a dunk attempt by UCLA center Riley, who had an awesome game. Of course, a couple possessions later, Riley got himself a really nice, I mean, it was a pretty big block too. But Suggs really changed the complexion of the game. Like, Riley kept Gonzaga on that play from going up multiple or going up, which probably would have kept UCLA from, it would have made it much harder for them to tie the game up. The block by Suggs kept UCLA from, I think UCLA would have gone in front, or maybe would have tied the game. Like, it was a big swing, because it was a 4-point swing. It took a basket off the board for UCLA and got Gonzaga a bucket, and it might have been an one bucket, but it was just a crazy sequence from Suggs. That guy is a competitor. He has all the tools you want in a guard. He is a shot maker. He is a dogged defender. This guy has some Westbrook in him. This guy has some Derrick. Like, when I've watched him play, to me, he's like this mixture of like Derrick Rose and Damian Lillard. But he's got some Westbrook in him too, like, because all those guys are crazy athletes, but that chase down block, the chase down block was very Westbrook or Dwayne Wade that he got on Riley. I mean, he's just ridiculous, and he's a team player. He's a selfless player. Like, he's a better, like, I think he'll be a better defender than either of those three guys. Just NBA superstars I named at the next level. I don't know if he'll necessarily reach any of their heights, but he's an amazing prospect, and he might be my favorite player in this NBA draft. I love him. And towards the end of the game, and he had stretches where he was definitely the focus, but Tim A of Gonzaga got some big baskets down the stretch, and in overtime, which UCLA, this is a big thing. UCLA got this just huge game or had the game tied, and they had a chance to win it, and Time gets this huge charge with a second left on the clock, basically. Just steps in, takes the charge. Which I'll say this, like, I'm not always the biggest fan of like charges, because I'm like, oh, some guy steps in from out of the play, not actually going to defend anything. He's just going to stop and just stop doing anything at all. He's just going to stand bolt upright and make a dude plow through him. So he's creating the contact. This is not like some guy's driving at you and you stand your ground. This is people sliding in out of nowhere to cause an obstruction that gets the foul. To me, you're the one initiating contact. It's one thing when you're already there and a guy's coming and you step in, like you stop. But these guys who come sliding in out of nowhere, and that's kind of what Time does on the play. But it's within the rules of the game. It was a clutch play. It was a very Anderson Varejao, Kyle Lowry kind of play. Two of the best like charge snaggers that I know, or that I can think of. And then so they've got like 1.1 seconds left. And I get there's not a lot of time. You're on your baseline. They just heave the ball down court and it gets like straight to a UCLA guy. And I'm just like, okay, well, overtime. Sorry, should have muted my mic before I started drinking. I've got this handy little mute button right here. So, yeah. Nice handy little mute button. That way I don't have to go quick over here and find stuff. But it was a great game. So it goes into overtime, and man, Gonzaga just starts feeding Time. Feeding the beast. And there's this play once again, that guard who transferred from Florida, who I can't remember his full name or his last name, it's weird. He made this beautiful pass. He ran a pick and roll with Time, and he waits for Time to start his he's set up the big, and now he's using his backside, and he puts his butt right on the defender's hip, and he kind of swivels around, and right as he's doing that, and as part of the movie, kind of leans into him, so his arms kind of come down. The guard puts this pass right to where his hands are going. Time just snags it and fluidly turns up into this, nice, easy layup. And it was just this really just balletic, timed play. Instead of just like throwing the ball to him like immediately, like the guard hesitates, kind of takes a hesitation dribble to create some space and take some time to wait to the perfect time for that pass. It was just so good. And UCLA just kept hitting shots. They kept hitting shots. Their point guard, I think his name's Campbell, just big old hair. He was just steady all game. He was hitting these mid-range shots. He was getting the ball to people at the right points. And that Januzag guy, Januzag or Janzag, whatever, from UCLA. He was hitting everything. It was ridiculous. And it came down to it at the end. Januzag hit this huge three after Kispert had bricked like 2 threes for Gonzaga, I think, like in a row, basically. Back to back. Like Gonzaga would get sometimes they'd get 2 shots out in front, or they'd have the opportunity to, and it was just they'd miss a shot, or they'd miss a 3. Like I said, Kispert was awful all game long. Like I said, he hit one of I think 8 3-point attempts, 1 of 7, 1 of 8, among other miscues. And so UCLA, and I believe it was Januzaj, hits this this just huge 3 to tie the game at 90 with 3.3 seconds left. And instead of what Gonzaga did the first, or at the end of regulation with 1.1 seconds, where they kind of set up, but they didn't really run a play or anything. They just got down and they set up in kind of like a formation, then you just threw it. They inbound the ball quickly. Suggs calls for the ball quickly, gets this inbound while there's kind of chaos. He runs up the court, and he's 30 plus feet from the basket, just a little bit inside of half court. I'm going to say he might have been 35 feet away. Somewhere between 30 35 feet away. Elevates at full speed over the top of this UCLA defender, who kind of contests but also kind of slides away because he doesn't want to get called for a foul. And Suggs banks that ball in at the buzzer. So instead of getting double OT, Suggs hits the biggest shot of the year. One of the biggest shots probably in NCAA tournament history. And Gonzaga's in the championship game. I mean, it was an incredible finish to what was one of the most incredible games ever played. And all credit to UCLA. They came with everything. They were on fire. They made precious few mistakes. They played a near perfect game, and Gonzaga was still able to win. And I would argue the refs probably, or if you look at all their calls outside of that flagrant, which was the right call at the time, I would still say that UCLA probably got the benefit of most of the refereeing of the game, personally. But I'm not going to say it's a huge gripe, because Gonzaga also had some big calls go their way. Like I said, the flagrant, the charge that Time was able to draw. But I definitely felt like UCLA got a little more benefit of referee whistles. And they played a near perfect game, and Gonzaga was still able to win the game. Baylor obviously looked more dominant in their game, but I don't think Houston was of the class of the other 3 teams. I don't think Houston would have won any of these games, or would have won a game against any of these teams. I think they probably would have gotten blown out in all of them. Although maybe UCLA plays to their competition, so maybe that would have been closer, but than, say, against Gonzaga or Baylor. But UCLA, it seems like they just are able to elevate their game to the level of their competition, and this time elevating to Gonzaga's level still wasn't enough to knock Gonzaga off, because Gonzaga's so good. There's a reason I picked Gonzaga to win the tourney. And I'm still sticking with them over Baylor, because they just had a tough test, and they passed. And Kispert can play better. And if there's one thing that Baylor showed a weakness to, it's still, I think they still had a rebounding advantage, but particularly in the second half, Houston was beating them on the offensive glass. I think Time and their backup big Watson have the ability to control the paint a little more than they did against UCLA and Riley. I think Riley's better than any of the bigs on Baylor. Meyer's good, but Meyer, he's kind of beanpoley. I don't think he's as physical. and that might be that'll help. And Gonzaga has far more dynamic perimeter players than Houston does. But it's going to be a game because Baylor. This is going to be a great championship game. I think we're going to have like a Villanova UNC. What was that, 2016 level championship game. I think it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to. I'll say it's going to be really, really fun to watch tonight, which that game is tonight. Do not miss Baylor Gonzaga tonight. So yeah, let me keep an eye on my time. Oh, it's already 2:44. So with that being said, we're gonna transition to just some brief little news snippets. So Deshaun Watson, it is now up to 22 lawsuits filed against Watson. 22. And I believe that also means 22 individual women. But at the very least, 22 lawsuits. It's to the point where, like, there's a pattern of behavior, or everybody who's ever done a massage with Deshaun Watson is coming out and just saying the same things as everyone else who's already said stuff. I don't know. This is so incredible. And he's so young. Like, this isn't like where Weinstein had decades. This has happened over such a short period of time that, like, I think Deshaun Watson, even if it turns out that, like, some of this stuff wasn't as bad as what was stated or whatever, Deshaun Watson needs help. Stop going to massage parlors this much or getting massages this much. Like, especially if it does get you in a certain state of mind, you also have a little bit of a problem. I think this guy probably needs some kind of therapy. Like, just straight up. We'll see. No judgments to be made yet. This stuff's got a lot of ways to go. And supposedly they have evidence that torpedoes some of these allegations. I don't know. It hadn't been shown yet. So we shall see. But 22? Like, dude, 22 lawsuits. That is an insane number. That's an unfathomable number to me. There's really just not much more you can say. The word, and I'm gonna transition the draft stuff here in a second. And I guess I'll use this as a bit of a transition. The word is that Mac Jones is gonna be is who the 49ers are going to pick at 3. Daniel Jeremiah, Todd McShay, and other people have said Chris Sims, who was at the University of Texas in college with Kyle Shanahan. They were teammates and really good friends. Apparently, they have each other's like initials tattooed on their arms or whatever. Like, really close friends. Shanahan was on Sims' podcast like either can't remember if it was 7 weeks ago, 7 months ago, whatever. He kind of jokingly said at a press conference after being confronted with this information that, like, I haven't talked to Chris Sims in, like, over 2 years. Which obviously wasn't true because of the podcast appearance, but it seemed like I think he was doing it kind of jokingly. He said, like, I've not told Chris that. But Chris Sims stated on his show or on his social media that Mac Jones is the 49ers guy at 3. Like, he's a Kyle Shanahan quarterback. He's exactly what Shanahan wants. He's saying, like, I know Kyle pretty well. This is who it's like. I absolutely believe this is who the guy is. Mike Lombardi has also said that this is exactly the kind of quarterback Kyle Shanahan wants, like a joystick that he can play the game through, which that's Mac Jones. Mac Jones' IQ, decision making, quick pre-snap, post-snap reads and reactions. Like, Mac's a smart guy. Now, a lot of people are like, yeah, but upside this, upside that, physical this, physical that. I think because of Lamar Jackson, particularly, and then as well, like Mahomes, Wilson, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers too, but like really Kyler Murray. I think we're starting to overvalue athletic traits at the quarterback position. We should be valuing them, but I think we're undervaluing the mental parts of the game and things that, like, some people just see and perceive quicker than others. They do. That's a thing. Just like some people are just able to reach athletic ceilings that other people can't, some people reach mental ceilings that other people cannot. And the quarterback position is, most people would say, is more mental than physical. I think Tom Brady and Peyton Manning would both say that. I think Drew Brees would say that. Kurt Warner would say that. Like, Kurt Warner wasn't some elite athlete. Like, in terms of, he wasn't super fast. Tom Brady, everything people are saying about Mac Jones right now is exactly what people were saying about Tom Brady. Now, they're listing him as like a first-round caliber quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Although Todd McShay has him ranked at like 28, and I think that's a joke. That's too low. Which people who have been following me on the channel would probably remember that I have Mac Jones as my number 3 quarterback for this class right now. Or really tied for 3rd with Trey Lance. Although I've been kind of flipping back and forth on that one between whether I have them tied with the same grade. Like, I think Jones is a little bit further ahead, but I actually think that Lance has an incredible head on his shoulders. And his athletic traits just far surpass Mac Jones, which probably make him a better prospect. So I probably, right now, I'd say probably Lance is now my number 3 and Mac Jones is my number 4. But I totally believe in Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones is a safer pick at quarterback than Lance. And definitely than Fields. I just think he's going to be, his floor is going to be probably, it's like, personally, I think his floor is probably a solid starter. I know every quarterback has a chance to bust. Even Lawrence has a chance to bust. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He is not a can't-miss prospect. He's a generational talent. There's no such thing as a can't-miss prospect. Because tons of those guys have busted in the past. Tony Mandarich. Can't-miss prospect. Courtney Brown was a can't-miss prospect. Tim Couch was a can't-miss prospect. David Carr and Joey Harrington were, these great, talents that were going to change franchises. No. They didn't. But anyway, I don't it. So there's a lot of people saying that if Mac Jones, and I think I talked about this on a show last week, but if Mac Jones gets drafted at 3, that's not good value. You could have gotten him at 12. That's not a guarantee. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. There's a lot of teams, because this is the other thing that's going around. GMs are basically been going around telling like some of these media people, I get that y'all are all about the physical traits and y'all just don't see it with Mac Jones. Well, we do. We see exactly how good Mac Jones is, and that's why he's up on the boards, and that's why it's not insane that San Fran would trade up for Mac Jones. A GM, I'm trying to. I listened to a number of podcasts. I want to say it was Move the Sticks is who I was listening to. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah saying that a GM reached out to me and said, y'all don't get it on Mac Jones? I do. Or actually, it actually might have been, you know what? It might not have been with the Sticks. It may have been the Ringer NFL show. It might have been Kevin Clark was saying that. I think it might have been Kevin Clark. Because he and Nora Princiati, who I guess has replaced Robert Mays at the Ringer, which that's a downgrade. I need to find where Robert Mays is at now because I love Mays. His offensive line stuff is tasty, tasty, tasty analysis. I've learned a lot from Robert Mays over the years. I think it was Kevin Clark was saying, like, front office people are really high on Mac Jones. And there's a reason they're... Now, this is not to say that every front office executive, every GM is good at their job. But usually there's a reason why they got there. They've gotten things right at different points in time. Occasionally it's because you know the right people, but, you know. For the most part, these guys live football, breathe football. They've been around it. They're doing it. They are high on Mac Jones. And the DraftNet community has a tendency to get really caught up in measurables. And this is such a measurable-driven draft this year. The amount of athleticism on display in this year's draft class is insane. This is the fastest draft class, I think, ever evaluated at this point. You've got, like, Penn State is putting out a linebacker and a defensive end in Micah Parsons and Jason Owe, who ran 4.38, 4.39, 40 for Parsons, 4.34, 4.35, 40 for Owe. Both guys over 240. Owe might be 250, but I think they're somewhere between 240, 245. Both of them. Off the same defense. That's insane. I want to say we have... I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Anthony Schwartz of Auburn ran a 4.26. Eric Stokes, or he's a wide receiver. Eric Stokes of Georgia, cornerback, ran a 4.26 at over 6 feet tall. Jamar Chase, 6 foot and 5/8, 203-pound wide receiver, ran in the 4.3s, and he's like, he might not be one of the 7 fastest receivers in this draft class. Like, it's incredible. Because I want to say his 40 was slower than or around the same time as Kadarius Toney of Florida. Rondale Moore ran like a 4.28 or a 4.29 40. Jalen Waddle, I don't know if Jalen, I don't think ran a 40, but he was, before his injury last year, he was the fastest player in college football on the GPS tracking data, And Alabama was saying that the week before the national championship game, as he was practicing, like he was running his routes and he was clocking the same speeds that he had been clocking prior to his ankle injury. So, and he wasn't even at 100% yet. So I think he's fine. I mean, this is just an incredible class. And then you've got guys like Elijah Moore, ran a 4.35 40 out of Ole Miss. I mean, this is just insane speed in this class. I don't know if Jalen Darden of North Texas has run a 40 yet. His is supposed to be ridiculous. I mean, it's to the point like we're getting disappointed by like Tutu Atwell I mentioned earlier. We're disappointed because he ran like a 4.42 40. Part of that's because he's so small. You know, you've got a bunch of other guys who are like around that same size who are running faster 40s, or maybe even a little bit bigger than him running faster 40s. And he's coming in at like 5'8", 5'9", 155 pounds and running a 4.42. When you're that small, you need to be that much faster. The corner class, like I said, Eric Stokes is fast. His teammate, Tyson Campbell, 6'3" corner, or close to 6'3" corner, ran a 4.38. J.C. Horn, a 6'1" corner out of South Carolina, playing over 200 pounds, ran in the high 4.3s, like 4.37, 4.38. Maybe it was 4.36, but he ran the high 4.3s. Like, what? I mean, this class is insane. I think Jamin Davis of Kentucky, who's a nice size linebacker, plays like I think in the 230s or like around 230. 4.37, a 4.37 40 at linebacker, and he's most people's like third, fourth graded linebacker right now. Although I'm pretty sure everybody's put him ahead of Nick Bolton at this point. I mean, it's ridiculous, like, the speed in this draft class. And just the depth all around in this draft class. Like, Kyle Pitts, the top tight end. He's 6'6", 245 pounds. Oh, and he just ripped off a 4.44 40. Like... Tutu Atwell is 5'9", 155 pounds. He's given up like 90 pounds to Kyle Pitts. Pitts is basically as fast as he is, and probably faster long speed-wise, because I would say it takes Pitts longer to get up to speed than Atwell. I mean, how are you supposed to stop that guy once he's up to speed? You don't just stop 250 pounds. Look at Derrick Henry. Pitts is faster than Derrick Henry according to the 40. Like, good God. Good God Almighty, you have blessed us with an amazing class of prospects this year. I thank you for the content. I don't say that facetiously. God is good all the time, and God has been good to me for this year of draft prospects. I'm excited, if you can't tell. With that being said, I need to get into With that being said, I need to get into my my draft primers for teams. This might take me over an hour. I don't know. We'll see. So strap in, y'all. I'm going to start. I'm going to go from highest picks to lowest picks. So we'll just go in order of when they're drafting. So we'll start with the New York Jets. You know what? Actually, I'm going to pull up. I'm going to look something up real quick. Let's see. That was a weird way to put that. Alright, let's run this. No thanks. I don't even know what that said. Don't care. Alright. I hate everything. I hate these stupid pop-in ads. Did I pass it already? No. No, this is going in order. I don't have it up on the screen yet, but I will. I'm going to use this as a reference. Let's close that. All right. So, let's. Boom. Oh, now I'm blocking it. Let me. Boom. Now I'm out of the way. So, we are looking at, for the Jets. So, the Jets own picks 2, 23, 34, 66, 86, and 107, 146, 154, and 186. So, they have 5 picks in the first 86. That's really, really nice. And of course, the second pick of the 4th round. So yeah. So for the Jets, their biggest needs, in my opinion, well, one, this is the big thing for the Jets. Are they sticking with Sam Darnold or are they moving on? Because if the Jets are sticking with Sam Darnold as their quarterback, sorry, text message. If the Jets are sticking with Sam Darnold, that gives them a lot more options because they at that point would have to hope that someone is wanting to move up for Zach Wilson, like to get ahead of San Francisco to make sure that San Francisco isn't going to draft the quarterback that they would prefer out of whatever group. Although, if draft Twitter is to be believed, then, as long as you're not taking Mac Jones, like, just stay put because the 49ers are going to take Mac Jones and you'll get the best of blah, 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 blah. We don't know how things are going to go. And it's possible that Mac Jones could be some team's like favorite quarterback that's not Trevor Lawrence, and they trade up ahead of San Fran to get him. We don't know yet. And if Twitter is to be believed, NFL GMs, for the most part, are stupid and front office people are idiots. And they're going to make the bad choice anyway, so some team's going to end up just lucking into picking the best quarterback prospect. I know it sounds really silly, but that's what Twitter thinks. Or at least that seems to be the consensus from the Twitter people. For me, I'm not high on Justin Fields. Unlike all of my friends and everyone else on draft Twitter, there's some mental hiccups that, like, I don't trust that Fields will be able to overcome, or that he will fix. I don't know if he can fix them. So I'm just not a huge Fields guy. With that being said, if the Jets trade Darnold, they're probably, and from what I understand, from what I understand, they're really high on Zach Wilson, which a lot of people are. I'm really high on Zach Wilson. I don't think he's that far behind Trevor Lawrence, personally, for me. I think that the Jets, and I personally think the Jets are just waiting until draft day to see what offers they get. But I think they're going to move on from Darnold. I really do. I think Darnold needs a fresh start. Although I think Darnold could be successful in the new offense there. But I feel like the shoe's going to drop on Darnold. But I'm hearing like there's some personnel people who are talking about Darnold. Like I wouldn't even. It's like I might consider throwing like a 4th round pick. It's like okay, then he's probably not serious about, because we don't know what teams these are either. Some are saying like a 3rd rounder's too rich for Darnold. I'm like, I'd say 3rd rounder be pretty good value actually, depending on the team. And I think if someone was going to give him the reins as a starter, he might even be worth a 2nd round pick. Although I think because of how little time he has left on his contract, like this is his last year before his 5th year option. Because team has to decide this, like before the season, like are they picking up his, or maybe by May, if they're picking up his 5th year option. So he probably has less trade value than, say, a Josh Rosen who is going into his 2nd year in the league. Oh my gosh, stop blowing up my phone. Just get that out of here. So yeah. So that's the big question. I think Darnold, if they trade him, probably is going to fetch a 3rd round pick. If they trade Darnold, it's Wilson at 2. And then I would say I would say that their biggest needs personally, and maybe some people would disagree, I think everyone just needs more corners. That's not my top need for them, but I think they need to address the corner position. They need to address their other offensive tackle spot. I would personally just try and push George Fant into competing for one of the guard positions. You got Mekhi Becton, that's awesome. I think with your pick at 23, if you're drafting Wilson, you're taking a receiver there. And based on they signed Corey Davis, they drafted Denzel Mims last year, maybe you're like, well, they don't need to take a receiver in the 1st round. I actually think you take a guy like, you take a smaller, like, you take a guy who's going to play maybe mostly in the slot but be elite at that. You take a Rondale Moore, you take a Kadarius Toney, or maybe an Elijah Moore, which both of the Moores have the ability to play, like, I think, as outside receivers, personally. That's my opinion. And you maybe do that anyway. If they don't trade Darnold, if they decide they're sticking with Darnold, in which case you take Penei Sewell and either move Becton to right tackle or you put Sewell at right tackle. Or you trade down. Or I guess you could also say, well, take one of the elite receivers. Like, take a Jamar Chase. Take a Devontae Smith. Which I don't disagree with that necessarily either. Because both of those guys could be like destroyers in the slot in 3 wide receiver sets with Denzel Mims and Corey Davis playing on the perimeter. You look at the way Bama moved Devontae Smith around. And then Jamar Chase is an elite catch and run receiver. He's got great speed and he's physical. He's like a faster Anquan Bolden. Is exactly who he plays like. He loves like getting into corners, grills in the run game. Like I love him. So, but I would say if I'm the Jets, if I'm sticking with Sam Darnold, I'm probably going to try and move down the board with someone who's wanting to move up for a quarterback, which I would say at this point you're looking at Carolina or Denver, but most likely Carolina. So let's say they move down to 8. I would look at 8. You're probably sitting here with Jalen Waddle on the board. Waddle would be a good fit. Maybe Rashawn Slater's still on the board. He'd be a good fit. Maybe Kyle Pitts is still on the board, which he could be an option at 2 as well. Sorry. I would say that if Pitts is on the board, if you trade down at 8 and Pitts is on the board, you take Kyle Pitts. If not, I'd even consider continuing to trade down and get picks. But let's just say if they stay where they are, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like through kind of their first few picks, and I'm saying Zach Wilson 22 would be a great fit. At 23, I'm going Kadarius Toney. I'm going to give Wilson just a ton of young receiving weapons to work with, and an elite slot option at 23. At pick 34, I'm going to take because the further down the board, it's harder to project because you've got more guys who kind of fit in that range. At 34, I'm probably looking at offensive tackle. And so I'm looking at like Liam Eichenberg. And it depends on how many tackles go in the first round. Like if there ends up being a big run in the back half of the first round. But guys who could be in this range are like Liam Eichenberg, Jalen Mayfield, Dylan Radins, Sam Cosmi, I think. Some people have him much higher. Some people have him kind of like Cosmi's barely in my. I don't even know if I'd actually put Cosmi in my top 50 prospects, but I think he is worthy of a second round pick. I'm just not a big fan of Cosmi. But my thing is, if Liam Eichenberg's available at 34, or Dylan Radins, or Jalen Mayfield, like if one of those 3 guys is there, that's who I'm taking if I'm the Jets. Then you're looking at their 3rd round pick, 66 at the top of the 3rd round. This is where maybe you start to consider a running back. I know a lot of people have like them. A lot of people love like ETN to the Jets at 23. I don't know. I just don't like drafting running backs that high, especially ones that like. I get Najee, and there's part of me that even kind of understands Javonte Williams even over Travis Etienne in the first round. And that's nothing against Etienne. I think Etienne is an awesome running back prospect. But I like physical, like a do-it-all back, a guy who is big, strong, but has hands. Like Najee Harris, wasn't as prolific in college as Etienne as a receiver. But Harris in the SEC title game against Florida ate the Gators defense up playing as a receiver out on the perimeter. 3 receiving touchdowns. I think over like 100 receiving yards in that game. He had an insane game like as a receiver. And he's a powerful, agile running back, like explosive running back. Not as fast as Etienne, but like he profiles as like he profiles as like he can do everything. Javonte Williams can do everything. whereas Etienne's a little smaller. Not that he doesn't have some power and like not that he's not a good in between the tackles runner or anything. I just his skill set is not as beefy all the way around. So I wouldn't take him at 23. Um, but at 66, getting a guy like Trey Sermon at the top of the third round, I think would be a really, really good get for the Jets. And then at 86, maybe targeting um, a corner like Taylor from Washington. There's a lot of corners that could go like in a really long range from like the late second to the top of the fourth. Like there's so many guys that I could see some like rising, falling. Like Eric Stokes. He's kind of stiff. He's like really fast, but he's kind of stiff. I'd feel more comfortable with him in the third round, but he might be gone by pick 86. Tyson Campbell could be available in the third round. And Trey Sermon could be available at 86, but I would say in the third round, that's where I would maybe target a running back. And I would start maybe looking at corners in the third round for the Jets. You could take a corner at like 34. Like I could see Asante Samuel Jr. maybe still being on the board, even though I have a first round grade on him. He kind of looks like a guy who's going to go early to mid second, and I think he's going to be great. You've got Kelvin Joseph who could go in that range at 34. Like I said, I've got them going tackle, or I would target a tackle right there because I think that could be a sweet spot for it. But I guess it just depends on who's available. If Asante Samuel's there, I would totally not fault him for taking him. And then day 3, like you've got pick 107, top of the fourth round. I'm trying to think of some guys who maybe have some medical conditions who could drop because of because of like a medical condition and be available there. But I can't really think of any off the top of my head necessarily. Because I think Justin Ross returned to college. So. Well, I'll tell you what I'll give you in the fourth round. Okay, so say instead of doing that or going receiver at 23, they take a Travis Etienne, they take a tackle, or take someone else or at 23. Maybe they take a pass rusher somewhere. How about in the fourth round you come back and you go with like I think Atwell will probably be off the board even though I think he's a fourth round pick. So what about I think it's Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. He's a little bit of an older prospect. He's kind of shorter, but man, he lit it up at Western Michigan. Great route runner. He might be I think he has some outside skills, but he's a little bit of an older prospect. I would say but if you could get Eskridge in the fourth round, that'd be a really, really, really good value. As a kind of a slot type. Or maybe a Daz Newsome would be another guy, slot type, who probably should be available maybe around the beginning of the fourth round. And then like fifth round, there you're just looking for kind of like depth type players. I'm still working my way down to or through a lot of guys at those positions, or I mean who are like that late. So, but if you've addressed say rounds 1, you get Wilson, you get another elite kind of weapon. I'd say maybe in the 5th round you take like some like high upside physical spectrum or physical like weapon at tight end maybe with one of those 5th round picks. Maybe Trey McKitty of Georgia's still on the board, although I think he's going to go higher in the 5th round. I think he's going to be an interesting guy. I'd like to see my Titans get Trey McKitty. I think he was underused at Georgia. So, but ideally, I think for the Jets, you take Zach Wilson at 2, and in round or with your next like 3 picks, 23, or with your other 4 day 1 and 2 picks, you get a wide receiver, or maybe I'll just go to round 4. You take your other 5 picks that are in the top 107. You get him a slot receiver. I say you release Jamison Crowder because most of his contract is like non-guaranteed. I think it's like $10 million, but like only like $1 million or less of that's guaranteed right now. Or you try and restructure him because he's a really good slot option. So maybe you don't do that. I kind of would because I'd free up that money and spend it elsewhere on veteran depth elsewhere. But you get yourself a receiver like Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore at 23. You get a tackle like Liam Eichenberg, Dylan Radins to be your bookend tackle to Mekhi Becton at 34. You grab a guy like Trey Sermon or maybe Kenneth Gainwell in round 3 and a corner in round 3 as well. And then day 3, you're looking for developmental pass rusher, inside linebacker, tight end. I think is what you're looking at rounds like 4, 5, and 6. And like I said, if you decide to do something else and like maybe you decide you're running with Crowder, draft or Crowder's future replacement in round 4. So, which that could be an interesting thing. Like maybe you take offensive tackle at 23. Or maybe someone you didn't expect to be on the board at 23 is there, and you just take the best player available somewhere. Now maybe at 34, a guy with medical questions like Jalen Phillips has fallen out of the first round because of the potential concussion stuff. You take him at 34, and I think you've got an elite value. So that's my Jets primer. Like I said, I think to kind of finish their needs, they have to make a decision at quarterback this year. They've either got to, they've got to decide whether they're sticking with Darnold or they're drafting Zach Wilson. And and if they do trade Sam Darnold, that's probably going to net them a 3rd round pick minimum. So that would give them another pick. Maybe it nets them a 2nd round pick. If they can get a 2nd round pick, and it might be a good idea if maybe they package Darnold with a 5th and to get a 2nd, because I think that's what happened with the Rosen deal. Either Rosen got them a 2nd and a 5th, or they traded Rosen with a 5th, the Cardinals, to the Dolphins, and got a 2nd. That would also be worth it for the for the Jets. Because if you could get a second round pick, you could. This draft is so deep. With quality, like late first. I don't know. I mean, this is just a stacked draft. So, like I said, quarterback. They need a running back. They need to improve the running back position. Offensive tackle or right tackle. Slot type receivers like depth at receiver. Tight end. Because another guy to maybe consider at 34 would be like Pat Freiermuth, even that early, tight end from Penn State. I think he's excellent. And many years would be the top tight end of the draft. Or 66, maybe Brevin Jordan of Miami is still available at 66. He'd be a really good pick. Or further down, if I think he's in the draft, Charlie Kohler of Iowa State's another good one. And then you can never have too many corners. Never have too many edge rushers. And they could probably improve their depth at middle linebacker. And they did cut Henry Anderson, so it's possible I could see them later round, like round 5 or 6, taking like an interior lineman they like. See, I've already passed the. Okay. So now we're moving from the Jets to the Dolphins. The Dolphins are at number 6 and 18. So for the Dolphins, they're set at quarterback, so there's no questions there. Tua is their quarterback. So now it's how do we make things better for Tua? So you have two options here. Because I think I think there's three places you can go. Well, I mean, there's a lot of places you can go depending on how the board falls. But I think in round 1, you're taking an offensive tackle with one of those first round picks, and you're taking a wide receiver or a pass catcher with the other. I'm going to say at 6, if Penei Sewell's on the board, the Dolphins take him. But that's not what I'm going to do. Or necessarily what I would do. Because I think Tevin Jenkins is going to be available at 18. I think he's worth that pick. You might even be able to slide back and get him. I don't know. Although there's a lot of other people really high on Tevin Jenkins. At 6 overall, I have signed Will Fuller. I have Devontae Parker. I have Mike Gesicki. So here I'm making a decision. I'm assuming, based on the way the board is playing out, that Sewell will be off the board at 5 to the Bengals, or Jamar Chase will be. And it's possible that both of them are. But with the Dolphins, I think that choice comes down to whoever's left of Smith, Chase, and Pitts. And they might all three be there. And there's been a lot of talk of, well, if you take Pitts, then what are you doing with Gesicki? Because they're the same player. Pitts, I think, is actually a better inline blocker than Gesicki. But I also think you could play both those guys on the field at the same time. However, I would pick Devontae Smith because I love him, and he and Tua already have a connection. You can play Smith on the outside. You can play Fuller at slot. You can play Fuller on the outside. You can play Smith in the slot. You can run 4 receiver sets. You could. It's like, I say you do that. You play 5 wide. You just go empty with Fuller, Smith, Parker, Preston Williams, and Mike Gesicki, and you turn this thing into basketball. You're just running 5 out, and you just have Tua make the best quick decision. You just strain the defense. I think that would be incredible. But you could do that if you had Smith, Chase, or Pitts. So you take one of those guys at 6. At 18, you take Tevin Jenkins. Jenkins is a right tackle, or has played right tackle at Oklahoma State and been dominant at it. It just so happens that Tua's blind side is actually the right tackle, because Tua's a lefty. Jenkins is a mauler in the run game. This guy is very strong. He is technically sound. He's like a meaner, nastier Brian Bulaga, who is also stronger than Brian Bulaga. Brian Bulaga has had a great NFL career. I think Tevin Jenkins has a chance to be that good, and his ceiling's much higher than Bulaga. Or than, like, having a career identical to Bulaga's. So I say you take your elite pass catcher at 6, and then at 18, if you're the Dolphins, you take Tevin Jenkins. That means you leave Austin Jackson at left tackle. And then you get to move Robert Hunt in from right tackle to right guard. And that improves that position. And it puts Hunt in a position where his strength and elite run blocking get to really shine. And some of his foot quickness, or not having quite as much foot quickness, doesn't hurt him as much in pass protection. I think it's like taking Tevin Jenkins improves 2 positions at once. Then at 36, at the top of the second round, you get your running back. You take Javonte Williams at 36. Yeah, because that'll also help your offense. Javonte Williams is a big, strong, all-around back. He can do everything. And that's what Miami needs. And I think you get him at 36, or maybe you get him at 50, but I'd say go ahead, get him at 36 because your team is laid out really well. At 50, you go back to your defense, and I would say this is where you go. Christian Wilkins has been kind of a disappointment so far. I think he's still on the team. I don't think they've cut him. Raekwon Davis showed some promise in year 1. But you could improve on the interior line, like maybe a Davian Nixon of Iowa, maybe at 50. Well, I mean, maybe you take him at 50. Or really, edge is kind of an issue with Van Noy leaving. I mean, Beagle's solid. I really like Andrew Van Ginkel. But you did trade Shaq Lawson away for you trade Shaq Lawson away to bring in Nardrick McKinney to improve your middle linebacker position. And you have him and Jerome Baker, and I think Raekwon McMillan's there as well. Like, middle linebacker, I think, is actually a really solid position for them now. So at 50, I say you go edge, and you take a guy like maybe Joe Tron's available, Ronnie Perkins. And you feel really good about that. At 81, in round 3, I'd say this is a good place to maybe third round is probably where I would then address like the interior of my defensive line, or just add to my secondary depth. One of the two. see, at 81. They brought in Adam Butler to replace Devin Goodrow, but they might need more interior D-line. That's probably what I do in the third round is go defensive line. And then they don't have any they don't have any picks in the fourth round, and they only have like a pick in the fifth and seventh round, or they have 2 in the seventh round. A given that they can improve at safety. Like, this isn't just the greatest safety draft. Even if there's some guys I like. If they had a fourth rounder, I would say, because he might be available, I think it's Jamar Johnson of Indiana. That dude is an incredibly smart safety. Instinctive safety. I think he'd be a really good fit. So now we're going to get in New England. So I guess before I get to New England, Miami's draft needs, like if I were to go through again, add to your playmakers at like your pass catching positions. You need to address running back. And the roster is so good in other places, I would totally understand them being aggressive, getting a running back early. They need to draft another tackle which will kick Robert Hunt inside the guard. And I think Tevin Jenkins is the perfect fit for the Dolphins in that regard. And then they need to improve, or I would say they need to target an edge rusher for that rotation, or for their scheme to, replace Kyle Van Noy. Although I think Beagle and Van Ginkel, especially, like, those are your 2 starters. You need someone to rotate with Beagle. And then I would say your defensive front and your offensive interior line need depth. That's what I'd go with. So now with New England, Cam Newton's the quarterback. Jarrett Stidham is still under contract there. People are talking about them maybe being a team that moves up for a quarterback or lets the last of the top 5 quarterbacks fall to them. I honestly think they're going to run with Newton this year. So I'm going to run this under the assumption that they are not making a move for a quarterback. That's how I'm doing this draft primer. Because I honestly think he's made up his mind this year. Unless Mac Jones falls to them, because I think Mac Jones would be perfect for what New England's doing. But I think they're going to stay put. I think they're just going to improve the roster around Cam Newton, because I think they believe in, like, the early season Cam Newton from last year. So at 15, which with the way that New England attacked free agency, I think they can best player available so many places that it's not even funny. And with Isaiah Wynn, Trent Brown back, that 6th round pick, what was it, Owenu, who played right tackle for him most of the year, who I think is probably going to kick into guard. They brought David Andrews back. They re-signed Ted Karras, who played for, I think, the Dolphins last year or whatever. Or the last 2 years. think it was just last year. Whatever. I think that they're pretty set on the offensive line. That I don't think that's something they take in the first round. They signed Matt Judon. They brought back Calvin Noy. So their starters on the edge are set. And they've got Josh Uche and Chris Winovich from the last couple drafts on the edge as well. So I actually think, and they've got some other guys. I think they've got Anthony Jennings from Alabama. They drafted last year. Like, they have a lot of edge players, so that might not be a position they target this year. I mean, they can just target so much, or so many things. They're deep at corner, but they might be looking to trade Stephon Gilmore, because it doesn't look like they're wanting to extend him. Man, I don't know what is going on outside. Like, seriously, something is going on outside. I mean, that's so loud that it's actually slightly picking up on my mic, I think. So, anyway. So yeah. So this one's a little hard because they could really go anywhere. I say at 15 though, looking at the board and looking what they've done, and trying to think of like the things they value, I say you try and find your heir to the heart of your defense, maybe. And you get a incredibly versatile defensive piece in Micah Parsons. Now, he might not be available at 15, especially after that crazy pro day. But there are several guys in this range. Like, you have Parsons, you have Owusu-Koramoah, and I'd argue with his pro day, Jamin Davis could end up in this range too, if both of them somehow end up off the board. All of these guys are fast. Koramoah is a little small, but, you know, if anything, he's like a big nickel. He can play linebacker, strong safety, and nickel. Like that slot kind of role. I'd say if you walk out of the first round with either of those three guys, you've added someone who absolutely fits the New England ethos on defense. Versatility. Particularly guys between the hash marks. Or between the numbers. New England loves guys who can play multiple roles in their schemes. All three of those guys have the athleticism and ability to do so. Round 2, pick number 46, I think would be a opportune time for them to target a receiver. So you take a guy like, I don't know, the way things are looking, like a lot of people kind of think that Rashad Bateman might be available at 46. I think he'd be perfect. You sign Nelson Aguilar. I think Harry's probably already a lost cause. The dude just doesn't separate. It's been 2 seasons, and he does not look the part. And I worried about that with his 4.6 40 and just other stuff. I think Harry's a bust. But you get Julian Edelman back. You've got Aguilar. I say you get a guy like Bateman who can play kind of physically on the outside, but he's not slow. He separates. Bateman's just a really good all-around receiver. I really, really like his game. If he's not available at 46, maybe you're looking at, I think it's a little rich for Dyami Brown. but and maybe Terrace Marshall. If Terrace Marshall's available at 46, he'd be a really good fit too. I think for what that offense kind of needs. If they don't go receiver in round 2, maybe they go corner. Because, like I said, you can never go or have too many corners. In which case, in that range, you're looking at maybe Asante Samuel Jr., maybe Kelvin Joseph, maybe maybe Elijah Molden of Washington. He'd probably fit the Patriots really well. I think it'd be high for him, or for maybe both these guys, but maybe Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell of Georgia. I really like Campbell's upside. His length, he's longer than Stokes. He's not as fast, but he still ran a 4.38. And he's got more wiggle. Like he's better at changing directions than Stokes, even though he's bigger. So I like Campbell a lot, but 46 still might be a little rich for him. Round 3 at around 96 for the Patriots. I would say, like I said, I'd like receiver in round 2. Round 3, maybe they look at drafting another running back because they just seem to like to draft a running back somewhere in the middle rounds. Seems like every year or every other year. He might be, if he's available right here, or New England should draft Demetric Felton. He's a running back who did wide receiver drills at the Senior Bowl and in workouts, and he lit it up at the Senior Bowl playing as a receiver. He could be like one of those gadget weapon type players that the Patriots just absolutely adore. And also, this is the Patriots. They could always trade down and get more picks. That's a Bill Belichick staple. So I really like but I like Demetric Felton in the 3rd round of the Patriots. Although 96 might be a little late, but most people seem to think he's a 3rd, 4th round guy. If he's not available, though, another guy who they could look at right there might be maybe Kenneth Gainwell's available, but I feel like he'll probably go late 2nd, early 3rd. Maybe you look at Puka Williams out of Kansas. Maybe you look at I don't know. That still might be a little high for Puka. Although I really like him. I think he'd fit New England really well. Round 4 might be a better spot for Puka. 120 or 122. I would say round 4. Or another guy maybe they get at 96. I mentioned him already. Dwayne Eskridge would be a really good fit for them in the 3rd round. I would also say defensive, and they probably should try and improve their interior defensive line. They'll probably do that somewhere in day 3. Probably take a couple of guys, potentially. And they're so good in the undrafted market too. So they've got 120, 122, and 139 in the 4th round. I'm going to say that 4th round, they're going to target a interior defensive lineman, they're going to, if they don't have a running back already, they'll take a running back probably in round 4. And they'll probably take an offensive lineman somewhere in round 4. Round 5, they got number 177. They've got 2 picks in the 6th round and a 242 in the 7th. The thing with the Patriots is, and they don't operate like any other team, so it's hard to predict. But I would say with their first, or their big 3, they love versatility. So players who can offer them versatility on offense or defense are going to be a priority for them. So that's what kind of players I would look at for them to potentially target. And because of that, actually at 15, if he's available, Elijah Vera Tucker might be another guy that they target because he's got versatility on the offensive line. But I really like their offensive line. I don't think they need to do anything major on the offensive line, but it's always good to draft at least one depth guy for your offensive line on the day 3 of every draft. If you've got, the number of picks on day 3 that the Patriots normally do. So yeah. And lastly, I'm going the wrong way. So we're going to finish this off with the team that won the AFC East last year and should win it again this year. The Buffalo Bills. This team has done a really good job in developing their players, and they can do just about anything. The biggest weakness for them was they didn't have a great run game last year, and at times it meant that Josh Allen was doing all the work with his arm and legs. Devin Singletary is a good complementary back. I wasn't a huge fan of Zach Moss like a lot of other people. Although Zach Moss may be another year removed from severe injury, he'll be better. But I think at some point in this draft, the Bills need to take a running back. And it could be as high as round 1. Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, if any of them are available at 30, I could see that being a pick. But I don't love that value. Because that's just usually not how I operate. I don't know if they're already regretting AJ Epinesa, that selection last year. I liked him coming into the draft process, but he was so slow. And I think he can be a solid player, but they need edge talent. I think is the big thing is they need to upgrade their edge or their pass rush. I don't know if the value is good there at 30 on the edge. However, there's a couple guys on the interior that should be available in that range. Christian Barmore and Levi Onwuzurike. Levi O is what I'm going to call him, from Washington. Those guys, which you're saying, well, they've got Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver hadn't been much of a pass rusher yet. He really hasn't seemed to develop a ton. We'll see if he improves this year, but you can, in my opinion, you can never have too many good front 7 players, particularly defensive tackles, DNs, outside linebackers, whoever your front players are, your front line players. So in a 3-4, that's your outside linebackers, your 5 technique DNs, nose tackle, or in the 4-3, which different people do their schemes differently. So, but in say 4-3, it's your defensive tackles, defensive ends. You can never have too many of those guys, and you can never have and it's always good to have depth good depth on the offensive line. So for me, I'd say Barmore or Levi at 30 would be a great pick for this team. Then at 61, maybe take Kenneth Gainwell, who is an all-around running back. Um, who gives you breakaway speed that neither Moss nor Singletary give you, because they both those guys are kind of slow. Singletary is quick and has lateral agility, and he's got solid hands, but he's not necessarily a big playback. Zach Moss, breaks, tackles, or whatever, apparently. Maybe gives you something in the receiving game underneath, but once again, he was inconsistent and not really awe-inspiring either. So I like Gainwell in round 2 for the Bills. I know you're going to keep hearing Gainwell's name come up because he's a really good player. If you don't go with Gainwell there, I would say this or 61 would be a good time for pass rush. Always probably going to be off the board, but I would imagine some of this group to be available. Joe Tryon, Patrick Jones II out of Pitt, Rashad Weaver out of Pitt, although he and Jones might be better values in round 3. Although I'd like Weaver a lot. Although Weaver, well, he's not as slow as Epinesa. I need to look at his 40-yard dash numbers, but he looked quicker than Epinesa in college. Honestly, I really like Joe Tryon at 61, though, if I'm the Bills. Maybe Ronnie Perkins is available. Emerson Smith of Northern Iowa, although maybe he's a better value in the 3rd round, but I like Emerson Smith a lot. He'd be probably a good pick at 61. 3rd round at 93. Once again, this would be a spot where maybe you go the best running back on your board now. Personally, though, this might be a really good spot to get a speedy guy like maybe Anthony Schwartz, who you can move around. I don't love necessarily his football intelligence. I don't think this guy's going to ever be like a super skilled receiver, but his speed allows you to do gadget stuff. You can motion him in the backfield. You can motion him out. Jet sweeps. This guy's speed is legit. He was a track star. 4.26 40 doesn't lie. It's elite speed. Like highest end of elite speed. I think he'd be a really good get in round 3. You could always go for corner depth there. Maybe Trey Brown out of Oklahoma. He might be available in round 4, but they don't have a 4th round pick. They've got 4 day 3 picks. 161, 174 in the 5th, 213, 236 in round 6 and 7. If they didn't take a running back on day or before they get to like rounds 5, 6, 7, there's some guys in that range that like Jarrett Patterson. He's not super fast. He's kind of small. If anything, he's kind of like another Devin Singletary type, but I think he's a better runner than Singletary. He's just, we don't know if he can catch a pass or not because that wasn't something he did at Buffalo. Puka Williams might be available in round 5. Regis from the University of Louisiana. I think it's David Regis. Could or should be available rounds like 6, 7. He'd be a solid running back, but you'd just be adding another solid back, not one that's necessarily probably upping your ceiling. But and with the Bills, like they have the luxury, they have such a good roster. I would say they're another team. Focus or at some point on like day 3, draft yourself a developmental offensive line prospect. Uh, but yeah, I would say running back, like a running back with big play ability, like home run hitting ability, I think is a need for this team. Uh, Interior and out exterior pass rushing upside is needed. So I would just say pass rushing in general for the Bills, but inside and out. Can never have too many corners or talented pass catchers either. So I'd say those are the big ones. Their secondary is good, I mean I think their secondary is solid. They could take a corner for sure. But yeah, it's interesting because you got the Dolphins almost made the playoffs last year, but they've got picks like they're a rebuilding team, so they're going to be really intriguing to watch move around. The Bills are a contender, and if they nail this draft, if they get a couple like immediate contributors from this draft, they're going to be in the Super Bowl contender discussion. The Patriots could have a big bounce back season if their free agents hit and if they get some contributors out of this draft. And the Jets obviously are rebuilding again, but they have so much ammunition. And if they get Zach Wilson, I don't think they shouldn't pick in the top 5 again next year with Zach Wilson at quarterback. And if Mike LaFleur is anywhere as good as like his brother Matt with Green Bay, or if he's a solid disciple off that Shanahan tree, even with Darnold, they should be a better team next year. So we'll see. But that was my AFC East draft primer. With that being said, I've been Blind Eye. This has been Blind Eye Live. Please, if you enjoyed the stream, like or hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. If you want more Blind Eye, please hit the subscribe button. Then hit the bell notification next to the subscribe button. Flip that sucker to all. That way you never miss when I go live. I'm thinking about maybe doing some video content here in the future too. So hit the notification bell so that you don't miss those either. And please leave a comment under the video. I'm trying to read any comments, criticisms, what have you. Really appreciate you guys. And hey, if you do catch me live, please hit the chat. I should have shilled this earlier in the show. If you put a question in my chat, I will answer it or do my best to answer it. I love interaction with other people. I love thinking on my feet. So, and I will never call you all fans. Y'all are my viewers. Y'all are my YouTube homies. So, appreciate you guys. And I will see y'all tomorrow. I started with the AFC East. I will be moving to the AFC North for tomorrow. So, be ready for that. And some NBA thoughts tomorrow as well. So I have been Hunter King, Blind Eye himself.